I'm joined from Kyiv by Peter Mailev. He's the director of the Eurasian Democracy Initiative. Peter, thank you for being with us. We had an advisor to President Zelensky apparently trolling the Russians after the two bases were attacked, saying if the Kremlin did not study astronomy, if it had, they would know if something is launched into other countries' airspace, sooner or later, unknown flying objects will return to departure point. It's all a bit cryptic, but it seems pretty obvious what they're talking about. So assuming Ukraine is responsible for the attacks, how does this raise the stakes, especially considering Vladimir Putin threatened to use all available means to defend Russia, and that was interpreted to include nuclear weapons?
Well, indeed, this is first of all, the Ukrainians have perfected this art of trolling, the Russians, and this is another evidence of that. They are not taking full, direct responsibility for what happened. They're being coy about what new technology Ukraine has been able to develop. Believe it or not, there is that, research and development happening on the territory of Ukraine, and some, as far as I know, have been produced. These may have been unmanned flying objects, such as drones, that hit so deep inside Russia. You reported it's 300 to 450 miles deep behind front lines inside Russia. This is a very troubling sign for the Russians. Whether that would lead to any direct escalation, I think this is just kind of absurd to assume that Russia would just wage this war on the territory of Ukraine and not expect anything to hit, to hit it back. You get what you sow, essentially. I wouldn't worry too much about this escalation, because you have to keep in mind, Vladimir Putin has already been at pains to convince the Russians that they are at war not with Ukraine, but they are at war with NATO. So if in the minds of the Russians, Russia is waging war with NATO, what more escalation can you assume? Vladimir Putin has said it was not a bluff, that he would strike with all the weapons to defend its territory. Well, Ukraine has been striking one after another target, once again, coyly, not taking full responsibility behind front lines. This is as deep as they've ever gotten. And Putin does not have a clear answer to that. And I think the deterrence is working. He's been sent a signal by the international community, including the Chinese, that the use of nuclear weapons cannot even be contemplated.
And back in October, there was a statement by Ukraine's state-owned weapons manufacturer, it was posted on Facebook, a new long-range drone with a range of 1,000 kilometers, or about 600 miles, so maybe these strikes go even deeper still. This is significant militarily, but what about in other ways? What's the message here? What impact could this have on Putin and the Russians as a population?
Well, I think first of all, it's a question of fairness. You bring war to another country, then you expect the war to arrive at your own doorstep. It's already produced waves of concern. The mayors of these towns where it's happened have scrambled to assure their populations that all is well. I wouldn't be certain that it would, be an immediate threat to Vladimir Putin's regime. But if Ukraine develops enough of this technology and is able to strike, once again, these are military targets we're talking about. Some of them apparently were launching pads, staging grounds for these planes that would take off and bomb our territory. So this actually could militarily significantly degrade Russia's ability to wage war against Ukraine. As far as politically, right now, the population of Russia is probably less active and less courageous than the population of China that's risen up against COVID restrictions, and even the women of Iran. Russians, this is a clear, demonstration of what happens to a country when you have a leader in power for 22 years who has subverted all institutions and instilled great fear among his people.
And the immediate response from Moscow was to launch the 8th attack, specifically targeting the power infrastructure in Ukraine. And what is kind of surprising is that it's still functioning. It has a reduced capacity. If anything, this last attack did not include any Iranian drones and seems to be less effective than once before. What's happening here?
Well, yes, it seems like they may have run out. The Russians may have run out of Iranian drones. They're now negotiating, apparently, from what we understand, a new portion of those drones from Iran. It's not certain they will get those. Then their efficacy has also been significantly degraded. Ukrainians have learned on the go how to shoot down these drones. They're pretty easy to shoot down. Not all of them are, though. And even these ballistic missiles, like you mentioned earlier, 60 out of 70 were shot down. This means that the Western supplied anti-aircraft systems have been very effective. The Pentagon has reported, in some cases, 100% success rate. We are expecting more, obviously. Pentagon has contracted to produce 2 more NASAM systems. And obviously, the open question remains if America will give Ukraine its Patriot system, which is hugely sophisticated, takes a long time to learn, obviously will not help in the short run, but in the long run, we're going to be living next to this neighbor with Putin or without. It seems like it's going to be an existential threat to Ukraine for a long time to come.
Hey, Peter, thank you so much for being with us. Peter Zelmayev, we really appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
This morning in Ukraine, a Western official tells CNN Russia has run out, in the official's words, of Iranian attack drones, but is anticipating a resupply. Russia has been using a variety of Iranian-manufactured drones, which have formed, of course, part of these waves of attacks we've been seeing against Ukraine's infrastructure.
And civilian targets. It comes as Russian strikes reported overnight in Ukraine's southern Zaporizhzhia and central Dnipropetrovsk regions, damaging critical infrastructure and residential buildings. Joining us now to discuss, retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling is former commanding general of the U.S. Army, Europe, and 7th Army. Great to have you on, Lieutenant General, to walk us through the latest developments here. Lots of questions for you. First, I wonder if you could give us a sense of where you think this war is right now. Ukrainians made enormous progress in the south, recaptured Kherson, this after making enormous unexpected progress in the north a number of weeks ago. Around Kharkiv. Russia has struck back, in effect, by hitting more and more civilian targets. Are Russians retreating in this war?
I don't believe that is the case, Jim. I think what's happening right now in the Donbass region, the eastern region, what we're talking about is a little bit of an artillery slugfest. There has been an exchange of towns. Ukraine has gained a couple of more territory within that Donbass region and some very, very tough fighting and some artillery duels. But it's tough to conduct a breakthrough. Ukraine doesn't yet have that capability to break through the trench lines, but they're quickly gaining it. If you go to the southeast, what we're talking about over the last couple of months is we've seen some great advances by Ukraine on the western side of the Dnipro River. But now they have that river as a natural barrier. Every military commander has to consider roads, rivers, bridges, terrain features, and now Ukraine has to conduct attacks across that river, which is in some cases a mile or 2 miles wide, to get on the eastern side to continue to disrupt Russian forces. They're doing that by conducting artillery raids, precision weaponry targeting on the eastern side against the Russians. But I think what we're going to see, because of less daylight, more cold weather, the fighting won't stop, but it will slow down significantly. But truthfully, Jim, on both sides, it's still a tough fight, and Ukraine continues to gain ground.
In terms of where the war could be shifting, Ukraine is not commenting on these alleged drone strikes, which I believe we're up to 3 now, on Russian air bases, inside Russian territory. Russian officials are commenting, but again, not Ukrainian officials. What does that signify to you? Could that be also a new phase of this war?
It could very well be, Erica, and it's a great question. I'm going to expand the understanding of that strike from both sides in my role as your military analyst. From the Ukrainian side, first of all, it was a great strike, but everyone is focusing on the hitting of the targets at those 3 different airfields. But what I would suggest is there's a whole lot more to it from a Ukrainian general standpoint. They have to first get the required intelligence. Then they have to do a very complex set of targeting drills. Then they have to synchronize the travel of the weapon systems and the electronic gear after they assess the Russian air defense capabilities defending those targets. And I would also suggest that they've included special operations forces to determine where those best targets were as a surprise to the Russians. If you look at the Russian side, from a Russian general perspective, first of all, their number one trait right now is hubris. They think that they have a defensive capability inside of Russia, far away from the front lines. They've just found out on a couple of occasions they don't. That first happened with the Moskva, the ship that Ukraine sank. Then it happened an attack in Crimea. Now Ukraine is fighting hundreds of miles inside of Russian territory, and there was no air defense against whatever struck those airfields. One of the things, though, is fascinating to me is air defense for the Russians are either S-400 or S-300 missile systems. Russia has been using those against civilian targets in Ukraine. That means they've taken them away from defending airfields within Russia. So I'm sure there's a lot of very embarrassed and very egocentric Russian generals right now this morning saying, how did we allow that to happen? And they're being questioned by their civilian population as well.
A remarkable breach of Russian air defenses, hundreds of miles inside its territory. Yet one more thing we've learned from Russian military capabilities. Lieutenant General Mark Ertling, thanks so much.